Good morning, spiritual companions. We are reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, continuing the introduction on page 106. Sayampukur. In the beginning of September 1885, Sri Ramakrishna was moved to Sayampukur. Here, Narendra organized the young disciples to attend the Master day and night. At first, they concealed the Master's illness from their guardians, but when it became more serious, they remained with him almost constantly, sweeping aside the objections of their relatives and devoting themselves wholeheartedly to the nursing of their beloved Guru. These young men, under the watchful eyes of the Master and the leadership of Narendra, became the Antaraga Bhaktas, the members of Sri Ramakrishna's intimate circle of devotees. They were privileged to witness many manifestations of the Master's divine powers. Narendra received instructions regarding the propagation of his message after his death. The Holy Mother, so Sarada Devi had come to be affectionately known to Sri Ramakrishna's devotees, was brought from Dakshineswar to look after the general cooking and to prepare the special diet of the patient. The dwelling space being extremely limited, she had to adapt herself to cramped conditions. At 3 o'clock in the morning, she would take her bath in the Ganges and then enter a small covered place on the roof, where she spent the whole day cooking and praying. After 11 at night, when the visitors went away, she would come down to her small bedroom on the first floor to enjoy a few hours' sleep. Thus she spent 3 months, working hard, sleeping little, and praying constantly for the Master's recovery. At Sayampukur, the devotees led an intense life. Their attendance on the Master was in itself a form of spiritual discipline. His mind was constantly soaring to an exalted place of consciousness. Now and then they would catch the contagion of his spiritual fervor. They sought to divine the meaning of this illness of the Master, whom most of them had accepted as an incarnation of God. One group, headed by Girish, with his robust optimism and great power of imagination, believed that the illness was a mere pretext to serve a deeper purpose. The Master had willed his illness in order to bring the devotees together and promote solidarity among them. As soon as this purpose was served, he would himself get rid of the disease. A second group thought the Divine Mother, in whose hand the Master was an instrument, had brought about this illness to serve her own mysterious ends. But the young rationalists, led by Narendra, refused to ascribe a supernatural cause to a natural phenomenon. They believed that the Master's body, a material thing, was subject, like all other material things, to physical laws. Birth, growth, maturity, decay, and death were laws of nature to which the Master's body could not but respond. But though holding differing views, they all believed that it was to him alone that they must look for the attainment of their spiritual goal. In spite of the physician's efforts and the prayers and nursing of the devotees, the illness rapidly progressed. The pain sometimes appeared to be unbearable. The Master lived only on liquid food. His frail body was becoming a mere skeleton. Yet his face always radiated joy, and he continued to welcome the visitors pouring in to receive his blessing. When certain zealous devotees tried to keep the visitors away, they were told by Girish, "You cannot succeed in it. He has been born for this very purpose, to sacrifice himself for the redemption of others. The more the body was devastated by illness, the more it revealed the presence of the divine spirit. Through its transparency, the gods and goddesses began to shine with ever-increasing luminosity. On the day of the Kali Puja, the devotees clearly saw in him the manifestation of the Divine Mother. Last days at Kosapur. When Sri Ramakrishna's illness showed signs of aggravation, the devotees, following the advice of Dr. Sarkar, rented a spacious garden home at Kosapur in the northern suburbs of Calcutta. The master was removed to this place on December 11th, 1885. It was at Kosapur that the curtain fell on the varied activities of the master's life on the physical plane. His soul lingered in the body 8 months more. It was the period of his great passion, a constant crucifixion of the body, and the triumphant revelation of the soul. Here one sees the humanity and divinity of the Master, passing and repassing across a thin borderline. Every minute of those 8 months was suffused with touching tenderness of heart and breathtaking elevation of spirit. Every word he uttered was full of pathos and sublimity. It took the group only a few days to become adjusted to the new environment. The Holy Mother, assisted by Sri Ramakrishna's niece, Lakshmi Devi, and a few women devotees, took charge of the cooking for the master and his attendants. Surendra willingly bore the major portion of the expenses, other householders contributing according to their means. 12 disciples were constant attendants of the master: Narendra, Rakal, Baburam, Niranjan, Jogin, Latu, Tarak, the elder Gopal, Kali, Sashi, and Sarat, and the younger Gopal, Sarada, Harish, Hari, and Gangahar, visited the master from time to time and practiced sadhana at home. Narendra, preparing for his law examination, brought his books to the garden house in order to continue his studies during the infrequent spare moments. He encouraged his brother disciples to intensify their meditation, scriptural studies, and other spiritual disciplines. They all forgot their relatives and their worldly duties. Among the attendants, Sashi was the embodiment of service. He did not practice meditation, japa, or any other disciplines like his brother disciples. He was convinced that service to the Guru was the only religion for him. He forgot food and rest and was ever ready at the master's bedside. Pundit Sashadhar one day suggested to the master that the latter could remove the illness by concentrating his mind on the throat, the scriptures having declared that yogis had power to cure themselves in that way. The master rebuked the pundit. "For a scholar like you to make such a proposal, what a shame," he said. "How can I withdraw the mind from the lotus feet of God and turn it to this worthless cage of flesh and blood?" "For our sake at least," begged Narendra and the other disciples. "But," replied Sri Ramakrishna, "do you think I enjoy this suffering? I want to be well, but my recovery depends on the mother." "Narendra, then please pray to her. She must listen to you." "Master, but I cannot pray for my body." "Narendra, you must do it for our sake at least." "Master, Very well, I shall try. A few hours later, the master said to Narendra, I said to her, Mother, I cannot swallow food because of my pain. Make it possible for me to eat a little. She pointed you all out to me and said, What? You are eating enough through all these mouths. Isn't that so? I was ashamed and could not utter another word. This dashed all hopes of the devotees for the master's recovery. I shall make the whole thing public before I go, the master had said some time before. On January 1st, 1886, he felt better and came down to the garden for a little stroll. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Some 30 lay disciples were in the hall or sitting about under the trees. Sri Ramakrishna said to Girish, Well, Girish, what have you seen in me that you proclaim me before everybody as an incarnation of God? Girish was not the man to be taken by surprise. He knelt before the master and said with folded hands, What can an insignificant person like myself say about the one whose glory even sages like Vyasa and Valmiki could not adequately measure? The master was profoundly moved. He said, What more shall I say? I bless you all. Be illumined. He fell into a spiritual mood. Hearing these words, the devotees, one and all, became overwhelmed with emotion. They rushed to him and fell at his feet. He touched them all, and each received an appropriate benediction. Each of them, at the touch of the Master, experienced ineffable bliss. Some laughed, some wept, some sat down to meditate, some began to pray. Some saw light, some had visions of their chosen ideals, and some felt within their bodies the rush of spiritual power. Narendra, consumed with a terrific fever for realization, complained to the Master that all the others had attained peace and that he alone was unsatisfied. The Master asked what he wanted. Narendra begged for samadhi so that he might altogether forget the world for 3 or 4 days at a time. You are a fool, the Master rebuked him. There is a state even higher than that. Isn't it you who sing? All that exists art thou. First, settle all your family affairs, and then come to me. You will experience a state even higher than samadhi. The Master did not hide the fact that he wished to make Narendra his spiritual heir. Narendra was to continue the work after Sri Ramakrishna's passing. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, I leave these young men in your charge. See that they develop their spirituality and do not return home. One day he asked the boys, in preparation for a monastic life, to beg their food from door to door without thought of caste. They hailed the Master's order and went out with begging bowls. A few days later, he gave the ochre cloth of the sannyasi to each of them, including Girish, who was now second to none in his spirit of renunciation. Thus the Master himself laid the foundation of the future Ramakrishna order of monks. Sri Ramakrishna was sinking day by day. His diet was reduced to a minimum, and he found it almost impossible to swallow anything. He whispered to M, I am bearing all this cheerfully, for otherwise you would be weeping. If you all say that it is better that the body should go rather than suffer this torture, I am willing. The next morning he said to his depressed disciples seated near the bed, Do you know what I see? I see that God alone has become everything. Men and animals are only frameworks covered with skin, and it is He who is moving through their heads and limbs. I see that it is God Himself who has become the block, the executioner, and the victim for the sacrifice. He fainted with emotion. Regaining partial consciousness, he said, "Now I have no pain. I am very well." Looking at Latu, he said, "There sits Latu, resting his head on the palm of his hand. To me, it is the Lord who is seated in that posture." The words were tender and touching. Like a mother, he caressed Narendra and Rakhal, gently stroking their faces. He said in a half-whisper to M, "Had this body been allowed to last a little longer, many more souls would have been illumined." He paused a moment and then said, "But Mother has ordained otherwise. She will take me away, lest, finding me guileless and foolish, people should take advantage of me and persuade me to bestow on them the rare gifts of spirituality." A few minutes later, he touched his chest and said, "Here are two beings. One is she, and the other is her devotee. It is the latter who broke his arm, and it is he again who is now ill. Do you understand me?" After a pause, he added, "Alas, to whom shall I tell all this? Who will understand me?" Pain, he consoled them again, is unavoidable as long as there is a body. The Lord takes on the body for his devotees' sake. Yet one is not sure whether or not the Master's soul actually was tortured by this agonizing disease. At least during his moments of spiritual exaltation, which became almost constant during the closing days of his life on earth, he lost all consciousness of the body, of illness and suffering. One of his attendants, who was later known as Swami Abhutananda, said, "While Sri Ramakrishna lay sick, he never actually suffered pain. He would often say, 'O mind, forget the body, forget this sickness, and remain merged in bliss.' No, he did not really suffer. At times he would be in such a state that the thrill of joy was clearly manifested in his body. Even when he could not speak, he would let us know in some way that there was no suffering, that this fact was clearly evident to all who watched him. People who did not understand him thought that his suffering was very great. What spiritual joy he transmitted to us at that time! Could such a thing have been possible if he himself had been suffering physically? It was during this period that he taught us these truths. Brahman is always unattached. The three gunas are in it, but it is unaffected by them, just as the wind carries odor, yet remains odorless. Brahman is infinite being, infinite wisdom, infinite bliss. In it there is no delusion, no misery, no disease, no death, no growth, no decay. The transcendental being and the being within are one and the same. There is only one indivisible, absolute existence. The Holy Mother secretly went to a Shiva temple across the Ganges to intercede with the deity for the Master's recovery. In a revelation, she was asked to prepare herself for the inevitable end. One day, when Narendra was on the ground floor meditating, the Master was lying awake in his bed upstairs. In the depths of his meditation, Narendra felt as though a lamp were burning at the back of his head. Suddenly, he lost consciousness. It was the yearned-for, all-effacing experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, when the embodied soul realizes its unity with the Absolute. After a very long time, he regained partial consciousness, but was unable to find his body. He could see only his head. "Where is my body?" he cried. The elder Gopal entered the room and said, "Why, it is here, Naren." But Narendra could not find it. Gopal, frightened, ran upstairs to the master. Sri Ramakrishna only said, "Let him stay that way for a time. He has worried me long enough." After another long period, Narendra regained full consciousness. Bathed in peace, he went to the master, who said, "Now the mother has shown you everything, but this revelation will remain under lock and key, and I shall keep the key. When you have accomplished the mother's work, you will find the treasure again." Some days later, Narendra, being alone with the master, Sri Ramakrishna looked at him and went into samadhi. Narendra felt the penetration of a subtle power and lost all outer consciousness. Regaining presently the normal mood, he found the master weeping. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "Today I have given you my all, and I am now only a poor fakir, possessing nothing. By this power you will do immense good in the world, and not until it is accomplished will you return." Henceforth, the master lived in the disciple. Doubt, however, dies hard. After 1 or 2 days, Narendra said to himself, "If in the midst of this racking physical pain he declares himself to be the Godhead, then only shall I accept him as an incarnation of God." He was alone by the bedside of the master. It was merely a passing thought, but the master smiled. Gathering his remaining strength, he distinctly said, "He who was Rama and Krishna is now, in this body, Ramakrishna, but not in your Vedantic sense." Narendra was stricken with shame. Mahasamadhi. It was Sunday, August 15th, 1886. The master's pulse became irregular. The devotees stood by the bedside. Toward dusk, Sri Ramakrishna had difficulty in breathing. A short time afterward, he complained of hunger. A little liquid food was put into his mouth. Some of it he swallowed, and the rest ran over his chin. 2 attendants began to fan him. All at once he went into samadhi of a rather unusual type. The body became stiff. Sashi burst into tears. But after midnight, the master revived. He was now very hungry and helped himself to a bowl of farina pudding. He said he was strong again. He sat up against 5 or 6 pillows, which were supported by the body of Sashi, who was fanning him. Narendra took his feet on his lap and began to rub them. Again and again the master repeated to him, "Take care of these boys." Then he asked to lie down. 3 times, in ringing tones, he cried the name of Kali, his life's beloved, and lay back. At 2 minutes past 1, there was a low sound in his throat, and his head fell a little to one side. A thrill passed over his body. His hair stood on end. His eyes became fixed on the tip of his nose. His face was lighted with a smile. The final ecstasy began. It was Mahasamadhi. total absorption, from which his mind never returned. Narendra, unable to bear it, ran downstairs. Dr. Sarkar arrived the following noon and pronounced that life had departed not more than half an hour before. At 5 o'clock, the master's body was brought downstairs, laid on a cot, dressed in ochre clothes, and decorated with sandal paste and flowers. A procession was formed. The passer-by wept as the body was taken to the cremation ground at the Baranagore Ghat on the Ganges. While the devotees were returning to the garden house, carrying the sacred ashes, a calm resignation came to their souls, and they cried, "Victory unto the Guru!" The Holy Mother was weeping in her room, not for her husband, but because she felt that Mother Kali had left her. As she was about to put on the marks of a Hindu widow, in a moment of revelation, she heard the words of faith, "I have only passed from one room to another." End of the introduction. End of today's reading.